Hi, welcome back to Going Green with Dan Antonioli. I have been here for a year now on this historic renovation net zero energy project, and I've been really busy for the last year. I've been making a lot of upgrades in the house with energy efficient appliances, moving in the direction of creating an all electric homestead. We have a new roof on. I've made a lot of progress in the barn, and a lot of you have been asking me about the solar panels here. Well, they were here when I bought the property a year ago. They are very, very big. It's a commercial scale system that I'm in the process of reconfiguring so that it fits into the aesthetic of the village of Dryden. They're big, they generate a lot of electricity, and over the course of several additional episodes, you're going to watch the transition from this very large, imposing system into one that actually looks really good and fits into the aesthetic. So today we are going to be talking about the role that preservation plays in sustainability, and I'm really excited because we have Susan Holland of Historic Ithaca joining us to talk about not just the benefits of preservation and restoration, but the role that that plays in green building and sustainability. The iconic American front porch.
Yep.
Disappearing emblem of American architecture, but of course we're going to preserve this.
You got some nice detail there, though.
Yeah,
I
can't.
Large up there. Mm-hmm. That looks amazing, like gorgeous.
I'm really excited to have Susan Holland here today. Susan is the director of Historic Ithaca. She knows a lot about historic preservation, and she knows a lot about green. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dan. I really appreciate it. I'm glad to talk about it. It's also my favorite subject at the moment. Preservation always was, but sustainability is another very key thing in preservation. And we've had a bunch of energy crises over time. We've talked a lot about climate change since really the 70s, and preservationists didn't really get in, I won't say they didn't get in bed with the environmentalists, which was a big shame. I don't know why or what happened, but we're kind of starting, not at the beginning, but we're somewhere in the middle there. And right now, I know that Historic Ithaca, who I work for, and a lot of partners are really pushing out to talk about how the greenest building is the one that was already built. We talk about adaptive reuse and looking at preservation from that lens, and also kind of getting away from the elite discipline of saving just the houses that you talk about, but really talking about the culture, which we have now, but less so, repair, and sort of our parents' generation and before, looking at them and thinking they repaired everything, right? And so that's what we really try to espouse today and kind of talk about constantly, besides the fact of using our buildings for other things. So that's kind of been the gist of our talking, our thinking about like my grandmother, using everything. They used everything. And that's what we should be doing, and we don't do that. So.
Well, I think the word repair is really interesting because there's different ways to repair. And we're going to take a look at a couple of different ways to repair here, because you can repair the right way, yes, and you can repair the wrong way.
Yes, and you can reuse the right way. So we talk about a building like that Dan has just purchased, and talk about its genesis as shelter for a family, the sort of historical narrative of the building where, families put on an addition and then they wanted to show their wealth, so they built a bigger building. But at the same time, they were still using the members, every piece of these buildings to create something new. In today's world, we're using the language of urban renewal, which is, it's really had, its useful life is gone and we need to tear it down, which isn't the truth at all. And so we take it down and then we're repairing what's left, or we're repairing, or we're removing those pieces of our history, if you will, and then building new, but also we're pairing with new materials. And what's been available in the marketplace has not been a recycled, except for, a very, I guess, a small part of the population. is to take other things and reuse other things. So like we do that at Significant Elements. Your door is missing from your historic house, we have a door. But in today's world, and you look at the materiality out there, if I had $1 million to create something that was sustainable, and I was an inventor, if I was a chemist or any of those other things that would take to build a new piece of material, you should have stuff that's lasting, sustainable for the next generation, and can go on our historic houses if we have to repair, not in kind, and we can't find a certain thing. You know, you replaced, and you always do the right thing, Dan, but not everybody has that ability or the knowledge. So we have to keep spreading that out.
So we want to take a look here at one of the right ways to restore and to repair and one of the wrong ways to do it, because we have a really good shining example right here. This section of the house was a back porch that they enclosed to become a sunroom, and when they did, they used traditional clapboard wood siding, which matches the original. It looks great. It's a natural material. But over here, when they put new siding over the original four-wall cabin that was the original building here, they put vinyl. They put vinyl over a historic building. And personally, I don't think that looks good. I'm sure Susan has a thing or two to say about that.
Oh boy. One of my favorite subjects, and glad to get a chance to actually talk about it a little bit on camera for folks and to tell them. So vinyl is a really toxic substance, first of all. It doesn't biodegrade. It goes into our landfills. It sits there. I mean, you want to talk about climate change and crisis. I think that vinyl is one of the greatest contributors. The other thing that's a huge detriment to historic buildings is that it's not covered up completely. So the wood underneath can rot out from the inside when the vinyl is not appropriately put on. Also the profiles. Houses to me, they look like, I don't know if anybody remembers like Hostess cupcakes and wrapped in plastic. That's what it looks like to me, all these buildings out there. So I have a problem. You can ask my partner when I drive around, but these houses are encased in plastic. They lose their profile. They lose the best thing about them, which is how they show their history, how they show the community, who they were and what they were. All of their details get wrapped in this stuff, and you can't see it anymore. Look around you. Go to any place in the United States at the moment. It throws off a chemical scent and a chemical that isn't good for humans or animals or the
in a fire,
environment.
it turns to chlorine.
It
and if
does.
you inhale chlorine, it goes into
know.
your lungs and
I
it
know.
doesn't come out.
I know. I spent a lot of time with fire departments over my career talking about buildings and a lot of demolitions, and the place that I last was, not here in Ithaca per se, although there's quite a few. They told me the vinyl doesn't help anything. It helps nothing. It helps no human, no pieces of the earth, and not our ecosystem at all.
And there's no proof that the vinyl is actually a durable material.
It's not.
This is probably 30 years old. A lot of the original wood siding on the house is between 150 to 200 years old, and it's still in very good condition. This vinyl is not going to last that long. This is the original clapboard siding from 1818, and it's still in good shape. Now we'll see the rest of it once we, be my guest.
It's so precious. So you can feel how hard it is. Like it's just, it's so pretty.
It's old growth wood.
I can't wait to take this vinyl off.
You can be here on the day we take it off. If you want to.
Some people go to ribbon cuttings, we go to vinyl unveilings. And this is obviously an addition.
This is an addition.
Late addition.
But what I'd like to do is put up beadboard on the underside so it matches the original profile of a colonial architecture porch detail of upstate New York. I'm very excited about this detail because, as you can see, the electricians have just taken out the overhead electrical, and I'm putting in underground electrical. So when this is backfilled, you won't even see the electrical. When these buildings were built, we didn't even have electricity coming into buildings.
Right, not at all.
We barely knew what electricity was in 1856.
No.
I'm actually going to backfill some of this with the, because I go to the local taqueria here in town, and 5 days a week I take an empty 5-gallon bucket and they fill it with green waste. We bring it back here, and I'm making lots and lots of compost.
Oh, awesome!
So I'm actually going to backfill some of this I'm going to put down a layer of cardboard
Yep.
to attract the mycelium.
Yep.
Throw in some puffball spores.
Yep.
Backfill it. Bring in some organic matter in here, because underneath this lawn, in spite of what people think
Right.
the lawn is not much when it comes to soil.
No, it's not. No. And that cardboard thing, that was my cousin from California, about where you're from. So
Mycelium.
she teaches me that. Yes.
Yeah, mushrooms
And my
love it.
partner's like, why do you have cardboard all over the place? Because. Yeah, it's good. Good work.
Yeah, speaking of mycelium, I mean, we got a lot of this. We had to take down some trees here that were falling down. It was right on the property line. So this is all mainly sugar maple, and I'll have some outdoor fires at some point.
Yeah, we had that too.
Maybe you can come over. We'll roast some marshmallows at some point. So now we're in the barn, which was dated back to approximately 1871. It's all hemlock. It came with the homestead. And what I find really, really enchanting about the barn is the fact that it is in such good shape. All of these original old growth hemlock timbers are original to the building. And the only restoration work I've had to do is to clean and power wash them and put on new floorboards, which I'm also doing in hemlock. But you know, one of the things that connects the dots between sustainability and preservation is when we talk about forestry and people ask, where did all the old growth trees go? Well, they went into the built environment. So take a look at this. This is old growth hemlock. I've worked with the Cornell Dendrochronology Lab. They have dated some of the wood going back to the 1500s, which means that these trees were about 300 years old when they were felled and milled. So where did the old growth trees go? They went into the built environment.
When you talk about dendrochronology, which is the dating of trees, and because we have better computer modeling these days, you can actually see the density in this wood. But if you look at what new growth wood looks like versus old growth, it's so dense and hard. I tell a story where we're working with some young folks in a church with old pews, and I said, well, you guys can move them, but you're not going to be able to just move them with one or two people. And they looked at me incredulously and picked up that dense bench that was built in the 1850s, 60s, and they could not believe the density of that wood. So that's what you have here. I mean, this barn is gorgeous. I should also talk about the smell. It smells wonderful. It's just got that clean, fresh, there's nothing off-gassing about it except a good, clean smell.
Well, I've been cutting hemlock floorboards for the new floor.
It's awesome. I mean, it's amazing. And to find lumber yards and folks, you know, local folks to do this work, local tradespeople to do this work is incredible.
Yeah, and another thing about restoring a wood barn with the same wood that it was originally built with, in this case hemlock, is that number one, I'm not mixing blood types, so it's just a good practice to stick to the same material, but I'm making sure that all of this hemlock comes from locally sourced mills and operations, and then I'm supporting family-run mills. Everything came local, as did these original old-growth timbers. Everything here back in the day was felled locally, skidded locally, and probably within a 6 to 8 mile radius, all of these were milled at local waterways. You know, if you had water, you could power a wheel, you could mill wood.
Historic preservation actually helps the economy, the local economy, and the green job economy that we talk about a lot, getting those, because when you talk about a building that's sustainable, that's newly built, and you know this, we have to truck materials to those spaces. They are manufactured in another country generally with extraction from the local their local place. They're not paying a fair wage potentially, depending on what country they are being made for. We have shortages in this country at the moment due to, you know, the 2020 pandemic, and so people are talking about those shortages. Those shortages come from taking it from another country, shipping it, using how much fossil fuel to get them here, and then those materials still aren't sustainable for our climate anyway. They're not sustainable, and they atrophy, and they are not good for the environment. So we can talk a little bit about LEED certification, which is supposed to be the highest of the abilities in green new buildings. there wasn't anything for preservation at the beginning when they set up leads. How is that possible that you're not talking about embodied carbon and all of those factors, but also how are you not talking about the local economy and what's happening when you build a new building?
So why did it take so long to connect the dots between something as simple as building with locally sourced materials that match the original and not include all those things?
Why? Well, I hate to talk about this, but if you think about the United States, the regulatory environment being influenced by the corporate world, that's what we have here. I've learned a lot in preservation, and I can't believe I have to tie it back to that, but we're not making anybody very wealthy, Dan, in these communities, except to give people a sustainable living and to live off the land. This local community that we're in, Ithaca, New York, and sort of the regional Finger Lakes, we do that really well. New York State does it pretty well, but other places are just not getting it. Look at the proliferation of suburbs and high-rises and things like that. Look at the building collapses in places where the materials just weren't great, and somebody's getting rich doing that.
Well, another thing I wanted to say about purchasing this lumber, I did so when global prices for lumber went up between 50 and 60%.
I know.
But the prices I got on this 6 months before that inflation hit the lumber market, the prices didn't change.
Right.
Because we're not contingent upon global inflation, the global economy. Local people, local sourcing, local mills. There was no reason for the economics of that to be blown out of scale.
Right, right.
And look at cradle to grave life cycle analysis,
exactly.
because at the end of this life cycle, I'm using water-based finishes here.
Yep.
So once these materials have reached the end of their lifespan, they don't just get recycled into something else. They can actually be completely biodegraded back into a natural material.
Where it belongs in the meantime.
Yeah.
And from a preservation standpoint too, I feel like we're connecting with our ancestors and the people who put this place together, and you can go to indigenous people as well, but just like the idea of the recycling of the earth.
So it's win, 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 win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know why anyone would want to argue with us, right?